Doctor wrote this. Pues, ¿qué es importante?
That's me.
¿Cómo sobrevivir? Knows. What was the question? ¿Qué es algo que aprendiste durante esta unidad? Todos los adaptados. Que hay diferentes animales con otra forma. En cada dos se puede
It was like the chart was like,
Yeah, I think our first adaptaciones de los animales. Yeah, aprendimos
Hey,
cómo es una- ¿Qué escogimos? Period. Animal. Period. ¿Cómo viven? ¿Cómo se cuidan los animales? Los predadores son más peligrosos. Actually, you know what? That is an actual answer. Yeah.
Thank you for letting me.
Shout out my boy who gave an actual answer.
That's crazy.
Animales. De adaptaciones.
literally.
Adaptaciones, but I'll take it. Que los animales pueden cazar. Bueno, okay. Diferentes animales tienen diferentes adaptaciones. Oscar, that's a very coherent answer. Thank you. Shut up, boy. No es difícil
There's
para
feedback,
encontrar
Kevin.
comida. That it's not good.
Kevin, there's feedback coming from the speakers.
No.
Yeah.
That it's me reading student responses live on the air.
You can just hear yourself.
We're ready. Look at what I
He's
made
like,
in
"Get rid of
class.
that."
Look at what I made in class today. His name is Gooby.
Yeah.
The Student Senate Business Meeting will now call to order for February 13th, 2025 at 7:08. Chief of Staff Ostick will be doing roll call.
Regent Adidam. Vice President Ramirez.
Here,
Director of Administration Gonzalez. Director of DI Nguyen.
Yeah.
Director of Finance Lacey.
here,
Director of Leadership Development Lasso. Director of Marketing Mai. Director of Recruiting Hammond. Coordinator of Student Wellness, Iratari Gums.
here,
Senator El Roxy. Senator Norby. Senator Jimenez Avalos. Senator Calderon Palacios.
Here.
Senator Benitez. Senator Brady.
Here.
Senator Gomez. Senator Hirschbaum Harding.
Here.
Senator Rangel.
Here.
Senator Vaughn.
Here.
Senator Rye.
Here.
Senator Valderas.
Here.
Senator Piper.
Here.
Senator Martin. Senator Lopez.
Here.
Senator Meister.
here,
Ambassador Ellerfay.
here.
Ambassador Aishan. That is roll call.
For our first item of business is going to be reading and approval of old minutes. Is there any discussion on the previous minutes from February 06? If there's no discussion, now we're on to a period of voting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the previous minutes have been adopted. For our next item of business is the approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion on the approval of the agenda? If there's no further discussion, now we're on to a period of voting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the agenda has been approved. Our next item of business is open forum. Is there anyone here for open forum?
Okay, hello again, everybody. For those who somehow don't know already, I'm Elahi, I'm the president of Sandwich Club, as well as ASU, but our organization is here at UNO to point out the hypocrisy of the UNO food policy and to actively protest the food policy. For those who don't know, you're not allowed to bring in any food, drink, any outside food, drink, or snack to share in any space. In any group meeting. That means classes, that means student organization meetings, etc. There are a couple of weird exceptions, I think, that aren't written down anywhere. I've been able to have an event for ASU, selling ramen without, specific approval just because it's like prepackaged, et cetera. But last time I was here, I advertised, our Christmas, sandwich event. That was a successful event. We had like 23, 25 people there. It was fun. And I guess we're still here, so we're still going. Since then, I mean, a lot has happened. I've been talking to professors, putting up posters, talking to lots of students. Students start to recognize me from the videos that I make for the social media account, the Sandwich Club social media. But also people who reach out to talk about how the heck do I have a food event on campus? Because Sodexo food is so expensive and they have a monopoly on campus, except for like a couple exceptions for like the food pantry or the cafe down in Mammal Hall. So people reach out to me and they're like, what are the exceptions? How do I get around this? And part of what I say is collaborate with Sandwich Club. And then I say other options. So recently somebody reached out to me about they were on the committee that plans E-Week, Engineers Week, and they have like a whole bunch of events and they get private funding from donors. And a lot of that funding goes into catering every year. And this year, there's no exemption form. They can't get outside catering unless they're going through Sodexo. And I said, like, how are you gonna have E-Week? And they said they're just gonna order from Sodexo, even though it's like 3 times as much money. But next year, if the donor is here, that the catering services on campus are gonna charge you like exorbitant prices. They're not gonna provide funding. And then the university loses E-Week. And that's a huge program on campus supporting engineering students. And I think it's a great example of how this food policy is maybe benefiting Sodexo as a company, but it's hurting UNO's culture. And if you're being selfish, it's hurting UNO financially. Communities can't come here. Donors can't donate to organizations that want to host events here. So I'm hoping that maybe by the end of the semester, SGA can maybe pass another resolution to try to get that changed. And then one final announcement, we are having another potluck on February 21st. That's next Friday in the Milo Bill Student Center food court at 12:30. Probably write it down. We'll send out an announcement later, but it is said it's not going to change. So February 21st, Friday, Milo Bill Student Center at 2:30. So thank you.
Is there anyone else here for open forum?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jess. Most of you should know me by now. I'm the director of the Women and Gender Equity Center, and over the past couple of weeks, I've just had a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share to the Senate, as we are semi-autonomous to the Senate. First, I want to start with this quote that I've been thinking about ever since a friend showed me a screenshot of it, and I think it kind of encapsulates what the Senate is going through, what UNO is going through, what we're going through at a federal level, at a nationwide level. And the quote goes, "Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do." And I've been thinking about this, especially because earlier before this meeting, WGC has its board meetings on Thursdays from 4 to 6. And during the middle of our meeting, we were interrupted because we were being told that we had to take down posters that we had in our office. And we were told that we would risk losing our office entirely. That's where we distribute from now that the Maverick Food Pantry collaboration is still pending. So that frustration has kind of emulated in what I'm feeling now. The policy was written on December 13th. Since that day is when we've had that policy. And this policy, I find it ridiculous for an office space that is in the student center that is paid by student dollars, but administration is writing these policies that censor us. And when we make noise that they don't like, the posters that we had up said we demand the reinstatement of the GSRC. And I find it that administration, anyone who's walking through that office is constantly reminded that the GSRC was shut down. And the GSRC was shut down because of this preemptive measure of authoritarianism. They think a DEI ban is coming, so they shut down the GSRC. So they shut down MCA. All of these steps that are being taken, they think maybe another DEI ban is coming, so they're telling us to take down those posters. Those posters are a safety hazard. Maybe we leave tape on the glass, but that doesn't mean that we're harming anybody by having those posters there. It's freedom of speech. It's not hate speech. We're just saying that we demand the GSRC to be reinstated. That's all we're saying. And this policy is directly affecting the building that students pay for. And I'm really upset that no one really fought for this no one really fought back at this policy. Maybe it's because administration did it behind closed doors without really informing students, but I would have really appreciated the Senate and exec support during something like that, because it was really heartbreaking to have to realize that we've come to a point where we're being blatantly censored. So I don't know if they're embarrassed that during tours that they have to show our office space, and they're embarrassed that the GSRC is closed. Maybe there's students that want to come to UNO and then they ask, oh, what are those posters about? And they see that the GSRC has closed out. That's embarrassing for the university, that the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center has been shut down. And at the WGC, we have an expectation of excellence. And I hold ourselves to these expectations, and I hope the people who were elected to be student government representatives also hold themselves to these expectations, and they have the passion to show up to their committee meetings, because the new purchase request process is really inefficient. I don't know if it's the process that administration bent their backs for the auditors to approve, or it's because the senators who make up these committees haven't been properly trained. But I think it's really outrageous to have a 5-hour meeting and only go through 4 purchase requests. I know everyone keeps saying to give them grace, but how much grace can we keep giving a process and people who keep putting this process before the people? It's fiscally inappropriate that we haven't touched that money for 4 months. That's why that policy got passed by the regents, because that's fiscally inappropriate, and we're still at a point where we still haven't spent that money. And I have given the process grace for 4 months, and I think we're at a level where the board and I feel really disrespected by the Senate for this lack of support during this time. And I call for the Senate to call for new senators to make the budget committee, because I think this process needs to go faster. And I don't think we should have to go, I put in a purchase request, and I don't think I should have to wait multiple weeks to hear back on that. So yeah, thank you.
Is there anyone else here for open forum? If there's no one else here for open forum, in the opinion of the chair, open forum is closed. For our next item of business is unfinished business. Since there's no unfinished business, now we're on to new business. For our For under new business will be appointment for graduate study Senator Rebecca Gomez. Is there a proponent speech?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rebecca Gomez, and I am a grad student in the clinical mental health program. But before this, I had the privilege to campaign next to Jim Rogers for his campaign in the Board of Regents. This campaign reinforced my beliefs that change begins with those who are willing to step up, listen, and lead. My long-term goal is to attend law school, and I see that my involvement in the Student Senate as an opportunity to sharpen the very skills I need for law. Law is about policy, debating issues, and finding resolutions for that serve the better good. As a student, just as student government is about identifying students' needs, collaborating with leadership, and implementing policies that enhance the university's experience. I want to be a voice for students, particularly when it comes to issues that impact us the most. As a student in the clinical mental health program, mental health is very important to me. Not only do I want to expand the resources, but I feel like we don't all the time know what is actually affecting our students, leading them to having mental health issues, which I think is important to know. I believe that this isn't only just a title, but it's about making a difference with our vote. I bring a strong work ethic, deep commitment to advocacy, and willing to collaborate with others to make a change. With that said, my background in clinical mental health, experience in political campaign, and future aspirations in law uniquely position me to serve as a thoughtful and effective representative for the student body. So thank you so much for your time and consideration, and I look forward to answering any questions you guys may have.
Is there any questions?
During your time as a student at UNO, I'm sure you've had the opportunity to see the state of our campus and to see a variety of different things that students are interested in. If you were to select a priority project or an initiative that you'd be very interested in centering during your time as a student senator, is there something that would be top of mind?
I'm so sorry. Can you
Yeah.
say that again?
Is there a project or initiative that would be top of mind for you if you were to prioritize something during your time as a student senator that you'd really need to bring attention to or focus on?
Could you give me an example of
Yeah.
something?
So, for example, past initiatives have looked at like expanding access to bus routes or ensuring reductions in parking fees, or as some have come up to discuss today, I guess, more efficient and effective financial policies so students can have access to student fees, and just making sure that regardless of what we're doing, that we're improving the student initiatives and experience on campus. And if there were things that you've experienced as a student yourself or have observed in your fellow classmates, would there be something that would stand out as an area you might like to focus on?
Gotcha. Yes, actually, so I know we've all struggled with like parking. I've seen it multiple times on like Snapchat stories, and everyone's always complaining about how sometimes they can't even get to class because they find no parking after being 45 minutes early just to find parking. So I think something that a lot of us can agree on is we need to find something more efficient and that works to find parking spaces, because not only is it really expensive to have parking here, but you pay all this money and you can't even find anywhere to park. So finding like different resources and finding other like options for parking would be something very smart. So that would be something that I'd really be prioritizing and looking at alternative options.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Now we're on to a period of discussion for our appointment for Rebecca Gomez as Graduate Studies Senator. Senator Brady.
I literally just met her 20 minutes ago. And I'm just gonna say, she seems like such a sweet individual. She seems very genuine, like very, just very passionate in her terms of her position. She was telling me that she was nervous about speaking today and that she was scared. She just like, oh, I don't know what to do. And I was like, no, I'm okay. I'm like, you seem like a very genuine individual. And the fact that she was nervous goes to show that she really wanted to put forth an effort in this. And so I do truly think that she would be the right person for this position.
Is there any other discussion? For our candidate? If there's no further discussion, now we're on to a period of voting. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, Rebecca Gomez has been appointed to the Student Senate. So our next item of business is Student Activities Budget Commission. Regent Anidam will be presenting the Student Government Association's budget. It will be for 20 minutes presentation and then as well as 10-minute questioning. Oh, there. Oh, that's cool.
Hi everyone, hopefully you guys know me. If not, that would be slightly embarrassing, but I will be presenting our budget request to you all so that we can hopefully present it to SABC in the upcoming week. I hope I also don't have to go over this slide, but essentially SGA exists to empower, serve, and represent the student body, and we do this by advocating to administration, faculty, staff, and the Board of Regents. And we strive to create a welcoming environment for all students on campus. And additionally, under student government, we have our agencies. Our agencies include American Multicultural Services, First Generation Student Agency, International Student Services, Network of Disability Awareness, Queer and Trans Services, and Women and Gender Equity Center. These agencies work underneath student government to provide more intentional programming to cater towards our student body needs. Starting off, here is our overall budget request. I'll be breaking it down line item by line item to give you a better understanding of why we are requesting the money we are. But as you can see in summation, we are requesting $556,860.40. And you may already have seen the agency's presentations last week, so I will not be going over their respective budgets, but I will just be presenting every other line item up to Student Legal Services. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me in between my presentation, but I will just go through them super quick. So starting off here, our unchanged requests, these ones are pretty simple. Accountant retainers, so we pay an accountant to handle our finances, so that essentially needs to stay the same so that we can essentially be in compliance with the law. Contingency is also staying at 1,000. What this line item is used for is if we overdraft any specific line item out of that fiscal year's budget, we are able to pull from that to essentially not go into the red. Same with insurance expenses. This essentially covers insurance for all RSOs at UNO. As you guys may already know, RSOs are considered nonprofits under the UNO Student Organization umbrella, and student government helps provide that insurance to them. So they aren't liable for anything. Then we have MAVRIDE. So MAVRIDE is a contractual relationship that we have with parking services that provides free bus passes to all students on campus when they show their MAP card. And then MAP Bike is actually a new program that we have launched this year in August. And essentially, it's a heavily discounted annual pass. So from $156 to $5 to students when signing up with their UNO email. And because of this program's success, UNO is actually the most active bike share in all of Omaha. So we should all be extremely proud of what we were able to accomplish with that and creating a more sustainable transportation options for our student body. Lastly, office supplies stays at $150 and first year leadership commission stays at $1,000 to plan their annual event that they are required to do in the bylaw. Moving on to change requests, we have a couple changes, but in reality, the changes are not as drastic as they may seem on the screen. So for dues, fees, and subscriptions, it looks like a $504 increase, but in reality, we have centralized our Canva Pro subscriptions into a student government account. Typically, agencies would pay for a $120 personal account, but by creating a team subscription, we're actually able to pay for subscriptions at $100 per account. I know that change may not seem like a lot, but $20 does add up, and we are saving around $100 by consolidating all of those. And then for programming and marketing, we essentially wanted to make our budget easier to read and easier to understand for senators. So we consolidated all of these line items, so awards, gala, programming, public relations, and swearing in, into a general programming and marketing line item. And that went up by $500. This year, we want to throw election parties, do some more civic engagement education, town halls, and I Love Emily Week. And though we are planning to utilize our budget for that, there has been some requests from Election Commission to get some more money to continue that process, which is why we've allocated an extra $500. Student worker wages. So as you guys all know, we do pay our agency directors, and this increase is just to be in compliance with the Nebraska state law. So right now the minimum wage is $13.50, but in 2026, it'll go up to $15. So to essentially adjust for that annual change, we have allocated $41,040, and that is just to pay our student workers a legal wage. Next one is professional development. So we're actually going to be decreasing that. This year, we haven't had an opportunity to partake in any retreats, though that is going to come hopefully soon in March. There hasn't been a need for SGA to go to conferences, and since we haven't touched that line item, it's in the best interest for us to make cuts where we see fit. And then same with judicial branch. It was meant to serve food for court rulings and election commission meetings, but with our new policy in place, we are no longer allowed to do that. So makes sense to zero that account out. This is our biggest jump, and I have a pretty good reason for this. So the reason we're jumping by essentially $100,000 is because we are looking to onboard a part-time lawyer. Right now, Jacob Stavilla is essentially at capacity with Student Legal Services. He's having to turn people away because he isn't able to serve them and essentially lead them to community members who may take their case. And because of that, he is in need of a part-time lawyer. And with the part-time lawyer, it would essentially allow him to expand his offerings to practice more types of law and to bankruptcy, tax law, and intellectual property. And to give you an example of like how much he has essentially done this year for our student body, this past year, he's done over 1,124 cases, which estimates to around 21.6 cases per week. With another lawyer, we would be able to add on 150 to 200 cases per month. And this would essentially allow students who are typically getting turned away an opportunity to leverage this resource that we provide to our student body. And also on top of that, he did mention that he has been given opportunities to apply for grants or go do presentations for foundations to get money, but he's had to turn that down because he is too busy in court. So giving him some space to apply for grants and look for opportunities to help supplement the funding would be a great benefit for us. And additionally, it's important to recognize the reserves we have. While this isn't included in our actual budget, I just wanted to stress this. Right now, we have $437,386.40. And based on the UNO policy, it's advised to keep only 50% of the previous year's revenue, which is $230,653. So based on your guys' cuts and what you guys vote on, me and my exec team, but also our agency directors, will figure out where we want to supplement part of our reserves for our budget request. While this isn't dictated in our specific presentation, I think it's also important to keep this in mind when you guys are deliberating. And additionally, I know for a fact that Chief of Staff Ostick and Director Lacey are working on a reserve policy that makes it easier to access our reserves account so that we can essentially use our money wisely and don't overdraft our budget. And do you guys have any questions? This is our final number, so. Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry if this was something that I just missed. For when we say that we're increasing the student worker amount because the minimum wage is increasing, which student workers are included within that?
So we only employ agency directors. The student worker for SLS and all SLS employees will be funded through the student legal services amount. Yes.
Does the new, as of what we have going right now, financial policy still allow us to be paying those student workers using these funds?
Yeah, so in the audit, I don't know if you guys read the audit, but we are allowed to employ student workers. It was just the way that the agencies were functioning was not allowed.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, wait, let me go to. Yeah.
Point of clarification, so this is a question mark at the end. My understanding is that if we're paying someone for services or some kind of service provided, that we can pay an individual. But if it's not for that, we cannot pay out to individuals.
Yeah, so we can pay wages, we cannot provide students who are not employed by student government money for services. Like a guest speaker, we can't pay a student for a guest speaker, but we can pay like an external person a guest speaker fee. Yeah. Yes, Mila, sorry.
I've been trying to find a good summary of what, because we got the new like spending policy and what that system is like.
Yes.
When they said that they revised the definition so that we now better understand what broad base is, do you have like a summary of what the
Yeah.
new revision is and what is?
So it actually benefited us in the way we function. Instead of serving a broad base of students, we just need to define how we serve a significant population of the students in terms of each of our programming initiatives. So as long as we're able to justify why disabled students are a significant portion or why women are a significant portion, that is allowed. But in reality, how that'll affect our policy procedures is just more internal documentation and controlling processes. I don't think that'll affect the overall policies, but it'll just affect like how Sierra will track it, from my understanding, right?
There'll be just different layers as we add additional.
Any other questions?
Has Jacob been looking for someone to fill that position or?
Yeah, we've actually had conversations with him throughout this year where he has requested additional support. I think it's at the point where like the way he's working is actually really unsustainable. And I don't know how long he can go without onboarding a different lawyer while increasing the capacity of students served. Nate.
And I just have one other point of clarification. We actually went with that was the full-time. This is for a full-time lawyer.
Okay, The full-time lawyer, so maybe we can.
So, because it would be upping the office from 2 to 3 full-time employees.
That is on me. I apologize.
Right, besides it.
Any other questions? Yeah, Dalton.
Point of clarification, so my understanding is that change was made this last Friday at Board of Regents relating to broad-based, and then it sounds like Saturday, we had our interim plan and purchasing plan approved. Do we need to make any further modifications to those purchasing
Modifications
plans?
will happen, but right now, we are gonna be following the interim plan. The policy, I guess, limitations will change in terms of what we can and can't purchase. It'll just change on like how we report it. But I'm pretty sure that we will be making amendments soon. It just. I don't know if you guys caught the Board of Regents meeting, maybe this isn't the right time to discuss it, but there is another potential audit on our Student Government Association that may be coming soon. So we just need to ensure that we are following the current policies at hand. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Yeah, Mila.
This is a point of order for one of the documents that we got sent. I'm sorry, this is a bad time to do it. On the 2025-2026 agency budget requests form, abstain is the wrong kind of abstain. So on every page, it says vote roster, yes, no, abstain. I don't know if we need to like motion to change that, or if since we haven't begun voting, if this is a good time to just mention that.
Yeah, we can change that.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
we can-
just
we
was
can
like,
just
because I
change
figured
that.
it would be harder to change it once we started actually voting, so, yeah.
Any other questions for me? Okay, perfect. Well, I look forward to your deliberations. I'll obviously be in the back, so if you ever just need to like yell at me to clarify anything, I would be happy to do that. And I thank you guys for your time.
Think to influence. Well, I mean. Yeah.
So we are gonna be discussing Student Government Association's budget at the last first Student Activities Budget Commission. So our first deliberation and voting will be first generation student agency. Is there any discussion on the budget for first generation student agency? Senator Calapan Palacios.
I'm concerned where it says collaborations and professional development events. So from what I know, it says in the interim fund AUs that collaborations with academic units, organizations, or student groups that would utilize fund A monies are not allowed. I just need more clarifications because we are not supposed to collaborate. I know that agencies can work together, but it has to be categorized as a student government event. So I don't know how that would work. I don't know if that's more of a Sierra question or the exec team can clarify that for me, or maybe an agency director, but I know that's not allowed.
Is there a question? Regent Aridam.
Director,
So that was initially written before the entire interim plan, so honestly, that's not bad for the book written. But in terms of what to do, I think the plan going forward is basically making collaborations more focused on agency collaborations, because again, that's gonna be the best way that we can go about it.
Senator Hirschbaum Harding.
Question for the FGSA representatives here. Do you have specific collaborations in mind, or has that become one of those line items where it's like, that's nice if that's there, but some of the original plans are no longer particularly possible because of that shift?
Yeah, so examples of past collaborations, it was with an organization, or it was with the Community Citizens. Last semester, we also had a collaboration with between all the involved agencies on the project plan. So we do our partnership wherever there are agencies SABCs, then some of them, I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of where we want to be able to chip in. So there are physical agency wide that we can contribute.
Senator Meister.
I'd also note that from my understanding of the presentations, the examples provided just serve primarily as placeholders of ways that they hope to spend the funds. However, as long as the collaborations are using an approved fund day process, they don't necessarily have to have all of that predefined. Their presentations just help to empower us with a better visualization of the ways that they would hope to spend the funds. But they can also modify those depending on current policy changes. Like I'm assume none of the agencies could have anticipated this year that we would have an audit and there would be a massive change in our purchasing structure. So giving them the ability to be flexible within that line item of collaboration is something we could certainly do and still approve and be within bounds.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Rye?
Quick clarification with us taking over the Pro subscription, are all the agency requests for KMA Pro, are they gonna be just automatically or is that something?
Director Lacey?
So all of the numbers on the Excel spreadsheet for subscriptions. From the original presentation, there is $120 in track of top of subscriptions. If they had a subscriptions. So that number is like 330 is without that.
Is there any discussion or is there further discussion? Senator Hirschbaum Harding?
This is a question more for, I guess, the rest of us. Since some of them, some of the agencies rather have specific, like there are two that I can see that have specific sections that are collaboration amounts. Either specifically one is like NDA has a part that's specifically AMS collaboration, and then we have this collaboration part. Considering the fact that we are at some point gonna wanna have to try and pare down the amount that we're presenting for SABC, because realistically, we don't wanna increase student fees as much as this increase is going to bring to us. Do we want to just kind of consider that collaboration piece being something that we maybe are eliminating as collaboration pieces, but slightly increasing their overall event programming? Like if they requested 2,000 for collaboration and then it's for NDA, which I know is not what we're debating right now, but I'm just adding it for context. They're 1,500. If we maybe dissolve those requests for that amount, but add 500 for their event programming, how do we feel about that? And also is like point of order, is that something where we can do where we're just like shifting the funding? Are we allowed to be editing things like that in that way?
Yeah, just the audio.
Well, yeah, so essentially how it'll look like on the budget we present, that each agency will get a specific total and will be broken down by these line items or even programming or operating. So it'll just get presented as like FGFA like number.
Okay.
So the way you deduct from, so this is just a good visual representation so you understand what you're deducting and what conversations can be about. But in reality, it'll just be like big.
Okay. With that clarified, I open it back to the question of like, what do we think about slightly shifting those numbers, considering that now it's technically just an event programming amount?
Senator Meister?
One thing that I think could be good for engaging the agencies and providing an opportunity for them to contribute to that process would possibly be being to see if we could approve the budget tonight and then possibly have the director of finance take that question back to the agencies and have them present with like some kind of brief that we can present to the SABC where they've pre-identified lines that they'd be willing to work on that reserve protocol that Drew and Nate are working on together to determine what a future request could look like. So items they'd be comfortable cutting back with the understanding that we'll be submitting a reserve-based request to help support those items in the forthcoming year. And that way they could self-identify which items they want to cut back on, if that's something we will likely need to do in order to achieve the appropriate threshold of fee percentile increase that's usually required by the chancellor's office each year. They usually cap it anywhere from 3 to 5% on an increase annually. So if we're looking at adding another $100,000, just in general, we're already looking at a 20% increase generally in our overall fee. Or our overall request just for student government, much less Mav Pro or the Gateway, which will also be factored into that 3 to 5%. I don't know, that could be a way that we could engage the agencies and have their voice in that process of anticipated areas that we could bring as, again, like an appendix to SABC and say, we talked with our teams in between our initial requests and now, and these are areas where they would be open to cuts if needed.
Request for information, when is the first night of SABC presentations and deliberations occurring?
Director Lacey.
Next Wednesday. 15th. Your presentation and deliberations is the following Tuesday, the 25th.
Senator Meister.
Request for information from Director Lacey. What is the anticipated cap on fee increase percentage for this year? Do we have that yet?
Can you please repeat your question? I know the answer, but I don't know if I should be the messenger for that.
It'll be publicly given to SABC, so I don't think there's any inappropriateness in sharing a public budget.
It is in SGA's best interest to not contribute to the.
But what is SABC's guideline that it's being given for a percentage increase? Like, are they saying?
They essentially want it to stay the same.
Okay, so 0%.
Senator Hirschman Hardy.
I'm motioning to disband the rule on speaking turns until 11:59 PM and no other rules unchanged.
There is a motion, seconded by Senator Meister.
Yes.
Is there debate? Is there debate on the motion?
No, not debatable.
Oh,
Non-debatable, okay. And then vote requires, where are you skipping?
2/3.
2/3, okay. Okay, now we're on to a period of voting. All those in favor, please raise your placards.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Very good. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, that we are suspending
specifically the speaking turn rule,
speaking,
so not the rest of it, just
so no speaking term rule.
there's no cap on how many times a certain person can speak in a turn.
Sorry.
I got it down here.
You got it. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Alright, so it's okay. Okay, in the opinion of the chair, the motion passes. Is there any further discussion? Senator Hirschman Hardy.
I'm so sorry. So I know that part of the problem is that we're looking at a big picture with our numbers and we're also trying to do this one by one. So I feel really bad for FGSA because they're the first on here and it's like a weird spot where like overarchingly we have to start thinking about the numbers that we want to shift. Is a slight request for information or just thinking about it mathematically. If we have that number, the 400 something in reserves, and we had our current number on this one says 425, but I thought we were at 566. But by what we saw earlier, how much of the reserves, quite frankly, should we be trying to use? So like, I know that there's the threshold that they recommend, but if we're talking realistically, looking at the possibility that it would be needed to be used for something else, have we considered what is the actual amount we're expecting to use of reserves next year, just so that we can start thinking about how to get ourselves down to the number of the remaining amount that isn't covered by reserves?
Chief of Staff Ostick.
Frankly speaking, what we've been discussing internally is paying for the student legal services expansion out of reserves, basically cutting that down to about 200,000 and then using that 85 for that and then to slowly increase it. That almost puts us at where we were previously, and then that effectively that change right there puts us down on what we had last year. With some slight modifications to agency requests, which we assumed would kind of come out through SABC.
Okay. So sorry, I shouldn't be speaking after.
Senator Hirschman Hardy.
So the thought that we have here is most of student legal services, if not all of it, is being covered by reserves. So just
Just the increase.
just the increase. So
Yes.
what is what would that,
It's approximately 85,000.
it's covering 85, so we're still at 200 and then, okay. I'm trying to visualize this and I've got no brain cells left. So then how much, I'm so sorry. If we're taking off the 80 from student legal services and assuming that that's gonna be covered by reserves, just because we have enough that we can wiggle that amount. How much overall from the rest of our budget, and that included within the agencies, needs to be removed for us to get to a 0% increase? Like, what's that dollar amount? If we're taking off 80,000 and then trying to get back down to last year's number, what is that amount?
Chief of Staff Oster.
It's like maybe like it's like 3 or 4,000.
Only 3 or 4?
It's something like that.
Like nothing
Across
shot
SGA
crazy?
and the agencies.
Just across SGA and agencies total. Once that student legal services increase is covered, it's $3,000 or $4,000.
And we're planning on presenting the fact that we would be covering that with student legal, whatever, with our reserves when we present as ABC?
That would be part of it. So part of the question is tonight, do we preemptively, and part of the question for the Senate is, do we preemptively cut it or are we bringing that to SABC? Because additionally, there would need to be a resolution passed after the financial policies are changed to allocate that money from our reserves, because that couldn't necessarily strictly be done with the way the reserves are written right now, like straight up through SABC, unless someone knows a procedural route.
Point of clarification.
Mhm.
Are we allowed to pay for salaries and or contracts through reserves?
Under the new policy, we would be able to,
For a
and the
prospective,
current policy too. Because it's been, or at least it's been done previously. Student legal services was the half of it was paid from reserves for the last, I believe, 2 years ago. About $100,000 went from reserves to student legal services.
Senator Hirschman Hardy, do you have a question?
Yes. This is another overall budget question. I apologize. Is there a potential significant delay in being able to get that funding to student legal services if it's coming from reserves and versus if it were to come from SABC? Because my only worry is then not getting them money to get that person on board when they need that person on board. So do we know like approximately how long it would take us to create something that could take from those reserves? Just thinking about trying to get that fast track so that it's not a consideration for SABC.
Director Lacey.
Well, technically, the funds go until July
Okay.
for
We
the physical
No.
year, but they have until July 1st or. Yeah, July or
June 30th.
June 30th, sorry, yeah, they have until June 30th to use this year's allocated money. So basically, we have roughly 3/4 of a semester to get the reserves policy figured out, along with a resolution that allows for a second lawyer to be added into the SLS.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes.
I also, really quick, I just wanna say, I know that we talked a lot about the reserves. So yes, that like we are planning on spending them down. We do have to remember that. We have had a year of no spending, or not a year, roughly a semester of no spending, both on SGA's part and agency's parts. So I anticipate that we will add to the reserves again at the end of this physical year as well. I don't know how much that is. I'm not gonna throw a number out there because I don't know what the spending will look like for this. But that's just something else that we can keep in mind too.
Senator Meister.
so I guess the big thing that we need to have conversations is about with the exec and the Senate would be like the longitudinal sustainability of funding a position of that size through the reserves and really ensuring we have a very structured plan for how down the line we're going to create a responsible way to integrate this position into our current budget without getting to a point where it's going to massively call for a cut on the agencies or on the student government just 2 or 3 years down the line when those reserves are drawn down. Because I think without making a plan like that, that would be a really fiscally irresponsible move and could be significantly damaging to the programming of the agencies or student government down the line. I just think that's something I really want to note. If we do go that route, that is a very significant fixed line that we need to be really conscious about how we integrate in. And starting it on reserves gives us a timeline really of like if our fiscally responsible reserve container is 200 and however many $1,000 and we're at 430 right now, we're looking at maybe a year and some change of that covering with salary increases and anything that we need to do to fund that position and insurance and so on and so forth. So I just think it's something that please, if we do go that route, be very intentional about the fiscal responsibility necessary to ensure that that position has longevity and that we don't end up losing that very qualified lawyer 2 years in because we didn't plan effectively, but also alternatively, that this doesn't result in like a forced push into 27, 28 SABC where the agencies or student government could have a substantive decrease in our budgets if we were unable to come to some kind of solution. Like this would be a multi-institutional plan, be it between different executive administrations that would really need to be put into effect pretty effectively. Like looking at increasing SLS a certain amount every year to account for that and get up to that point so that there's a little less taken from reserves. But also alternatively, I'd be really hesitant to cut $98,000 from several different agencies, even if some representatives from agencies are present here tonight, to not give them the time to contribute to and collaborate in that kind of cut, which would be the size of possibly several agency budgets. So I feel like we're kind of in a difficult position. Like we really do need this student legal services position, and it's absolutely necessary based on what you're describing to enhance the lives of students. But the commitment I'd ask for if we're going to look at doing it through the reserves is that we have a really intentional longitudinal plan for how to make that happen and transition it.
Regent Adidam.
Another option that we were considering is just doing a percentage cut from our budget and then supplementing that with reserves. So right now, we're looking at a 10% cut, that's $57,000 coming, and then we could just present that to SABC and then having them make cuts to ensure that we are without the percent increase. But it is like a really tough decision and it definitely does need a lot of conversation. Just by seeing how student legal services have operated over the year, it has been very apparent that they do need another lawyer to really sustain themselves and ensure that they are in capacity. But also, as Nate mentioned, it is like a question for the Senate. How do we best use our reserves so that we can sustain this momentum instead of
Senator Hirschman.
Question about the order and then over some like parts with that. We have an overall SGA budget debate after each agency, correct? And then that would include like random pieces like agency director pay and things like that were not specifically listed on here. So deliberating this agency's budget does not deliberate things like that because it was put in our page, correct?
Regent Adidam.
So if you look at the SGA page, all the agencies are blank because we haven't deliberated their totals. Once those totals are deliberated, it will get added to this and then we will make a vote on the official SGA budget.
And does that include agency?
Yeah, you see the agency names?
Agency director pay?
Agency director pays is at the top, student worker wages. Down, it's like row 11.
It's $48,500 for agencies.
But also that is, to clarify, that is minimum wage in the Boston.
Right,
So
but yeah.
that,
Chief of Staff Austin.
And if the agency budgets were voted, this is a question, if the agency budgets were voted on and then put here, things can still be modified before the total SGA. Got it.
Do they have to be reconsidered if we vote on it or no? Cause it's all one big document technically.
Cause you'd be changing it on that page instead of changing it on the earlier page, right? Yeah. I think so. Makes sense to me.
Senator Meister.
1 point of clarification, and then I have a motion. For one point of information, so the Student Legal Services Office was my student project 4 or 5 years ago. We anticipated having a third lawyer 2 years ago. So the fact that we've managed to make it this long without having a third lawyer to assist with capacity is pretty impressive. That he was able to manage that office and not need a third lawyer. We anticipated a third lawyer possibly primarily focused on immigration occurring 2 years ago. So I just want to give a shout out to the Student Legal Services Office and note that they've been doing an absolutely incredible job. That level of completed cases is way beyond expectation for what we had projected. And then I motion to have AMS, FGSA, ISS, NDA, QTS, and WGEC considered in block. That would mean we would vote on all of them together right now and then go back to the total SGA budget and just begin to review that in totality. So we could go between the slides if we needed to, but we could say, let's consider them all together and then have larger conversations about what we need to do as SGA. Because they have given us very robust presentations, very detailed and clear explanations about what they want to purchase. And I do not personally foresee any specific cuts to a specific agency based on our conversations. So I think the larger question is, do we need to make a decision about funding a portion of our budget from reserves? Do we need to possibly take a percentile cut from our total overall budget in order to achieve a 0% increase and fund that from reserves? Or do we need to look at just cutting across the board from specific lines and then funding those from reserves? But I think that's less a question of anything that we need to consider agency by agency and more a general student government question. And therefore, I'm asking to consider all of the agencies in block, vote on them, presuming approval, we then review SGA. That's my motion.
Senator Meister has made a motion to have all the agencies' budget requests to be voted by block. Is there a second? If there's no second, then that means the motion fails. In the opinion of the chair, the motion fails. Senator Hirschbaum Harding.
Just in the interest of knowing that we're gonna still have to cut a little bit from each of these, and I'm just trying to like blurb through them and look where smaller cuts can be made, because then it will come back. It's gonna be a bigger question of what SGA is gonna do for larger things. Specifically talking about FGSA, because they gave us also then a separate document that's really detailed. It really looks into a lot of this information. I think a lot of what they're requesting makes a lot of sense. It's important stuff. The only thing that I'm looking at here that I think could be a potential cut, because I don't want to mess with their event programming, it's an incredibly integral part of their agency. The banquets are important. The resources are obviously an important part of what they're doing. The only thing I can look at here and consider maybe cutting down would be that collaborations piece, and maybe just cutting it down to like a 500, considering that we still have programming in here. If it's a collaboration with another agency, we know that they will also have appropriate funding, because it's not like that number. I think would make sense if it were smaller organizations, because they don't get fund day money, but since we can't give fund day money to them, I think if we just slightly reduce that, that'll help us start getting towards that 3,000-4,000 that still is gonna need to be cut either way without disrespecting, I think, the fact that the rest of the numbers that they have makes a lot of sense to me, and it's integral to the way that this agency works.
Director Lacey.
Just like to make a point of clarification for the Excel spreadsheet. So collaborations is under event. That's why it's in the red underneath. So the way that the Excel spreadsheet is set up right now, if you change the number to 2,000, that 13,000 is going to change. That's for all. That's for all of the spreadsheets. So all of the items in red attribute to the total of the the top one that's right above it. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's just, sorry,
Okay.
the reason I was specifically calling it that was to verbalize why I would propose a slight decrease in that number. Because of that, thank you for that clarification, but yes, that does make sense. That was the slight decrease, because we have the information knowing that that was the theoretical framework. I don't want to get rid of it completely, because that just does not feel appropriate, and I don't want to be busting anyone's kneecaps this early into it. It just feels like if there was anywhere, knowing that we're gonna have to make an overall decrease, maybe that line item by like anywhere from $500 to $1,500 decreasing that event programming because of that, but I think it could be even like a smaller decrease than that to like get it to 500. I think just a small decrease, because if we do that same small decrease piece by piece, we can get up to that 3,000 to 4,000 that we know we're gonna have to cut regardless of larger cuts in the SGA portion.
Senator Calacan Palacios.
Have a request of information for collaborations. When agencies do an event together, is it one agency that puts all the money in for that event?
Director. Would you like to answer the question?
There can be different agencies that pay the money for that event. It's just the biggest thing that we need to say, the student government, WGC, and the PSA presents. So they can contribute money as long as we have it specified.
And they can divvy that up any way that they see appropriate based on their internal decisions.
Senator Meister.
Request for information, what was the total SGA budget in the previous fiscal year? Including student legal services?
Chief of Staff Ostick.
Approximately $469,000. That's this current fiscal year that we're in.
Senator Hirschbaum Harding.
What's the number we're thinking, guys? If we're gonna decrease it, because I don't want a motion before we've figured it out, because I do not want to decrease this notably, especially because this is also one of the smaller requests that we have. I'm thinking like anywhere from a 500 to 1,000 decrease for that overall, but like leave it there because the rest of it I don't want to mess with. But I'm just trying to make sure that we are getting within a reasonable range. What is a number that seems fair and reasonable, considering that this is also the first one that has to go to the chopping block?
Senator Rye.
I personally think a $1,000 is perfect because it is expensive to host events, to
Right.
collaborate. So if we are gonna reduce that money, I think a $1,000 limit would be good.
Okay.
Senator Meister.
Point of information, if we were to take $4,000 and divide it between 6 agencies, it would be $666 a piece if we were equitably distributing that above whatever we were talking about for the funding of the Student Legal Services Office to be covered in reserve.
Some of them are only requesting like a total of $4,000 for their entire like programming, which is why it may need to be more appropriately balanced at like what each person is requesting, which is why I ask.
Regent Aridam.
Maybe instead of voting on FGSA's budget now, discuss all the budgets and then figure out who
Yes.
Is there any discussion? Senator Meister.
That was kind of what the motion earlier was for, was to approve these in block and then to go back to reviewing SGA. Because I guess just not in review of the motion, so no motion for reconsideration, but additional information regarding that motion. If we want to center equity in how we're going to equitably distribute these cuts across the board, I think looking at the totality of the Student Government Association budget as a whole, and being able to pull that legal services element off and looking at what we have left, it will give us a much bigger picture rather than asking us to go in order of the agencies as they were assigned, because we may disproportionately assign costs to agencies based on just order, recency, or like different types of bias that may come into that. So that's my only concern and why it initially motioned.
And then request for information for Senator Rye. Did you make the motion to cut $1,000? No, okay. that
We're
was
just
the
talking
motion.
about it.
Oh, we're just talking about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion, further discussion for FGSA's budget?
How much the programming is free.
Director Nguyen.
Regarding like discussing like potential cuts, so Ashani the agency directors and I, we are having a meeting this weekend to talk about which areas they're willing, or to see which areas we might have to strategize around when it comes to potential cuts. Because of that 0%.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I'm trying to do weird math. 14,000.
Is there further discussion?
Yes.
Regent Adidam? We're currently voting on.
Well,
You should take Senator Piper's,
Yeah, motion.
Yeah.
Could I motion to move to group for about seven? I've got some numbers to add. Let's do 10 minutes. Okay.
Move to group, is there a second? Senator Rangel, no debate, it's required a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your placards.
like 11.
And all those opposed, please raise your placards. You said 11.
10, sorry.
Now, the chair of the Student Senate has moved to group for 10 minutes.
We'll be back at 8:27.
Just write it on there. That's on.
Did they not budget? Okay.
Are you?
I'm looking at all of their numbers right now to figure out what, I'm gonna percentage wise of the total request for programming, what percentage, and then figure out what number that would be and remove that percentage for each of them. To get to 3,000. My question though is, I feel NTA requested other things that weren't. They requested Oxford. Like, so I'll go, I was like, but it's not.
We need freedom to talk.
Yeah, like, let me just have it by event.
Look at everything.
I think
Fine.
if you want to be out of here by 9:30.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm not accidentally shooting you in the knees because of how it's written.
But I also think.
Ask, I don't know if
Somebody just be like, oh my gosh, like I put it here later.
Flag that had nothing to do with the actual
Also gonna go.
programming events.
So like,
How much was that out of the?
I don't know, like I does.
Okay, so that was
I don't
the
know. I
tailing number, okay, so I'm gonna remove that from what you're requesting.
Take more here, you don't see it, like I definitely did.
I thought Taylor was just looking at the
premium,
premium,
you can just be like, let's just.
No.
And then go to the roll.
I feel like I know that. One of the things about the-
Next time I see you, that I will be tabling
Right,
as a
like,
non.
let's say right now we decide.
Programming request days, the percentage wise, see how equitably we can. Elementary school.
The way it actually is on like.
All of their staff is programming, so it's once you.
Yeah, mine.
So that's like. we're gonna get SAT presents. I think we're gonna spruce up the presentation.
That's why they just figure
What
out.
we're doing for
Like I'm
agencies.
sputtering is
But
because
there'll be
like I'm
some
trying to
that-
figure
but
out.
I think it would be good to actually be able to
Everyone
go
is
through,
reflecting.
like, I think you're right, to be able to go through and, yeah, like, what are people?
You did, and that, but that's why I'm trying to, instead of just now throwing out numbers, I wanna find out what the
I don't know,
total
like,
programming
just,
request
like,
of everybody is. And then that's what percentage, rather than what told you that percentage. So then you're gonna also lose 1,000, like you only requested 9,000, it would be like, you're gonna lose. But ISS might lose. Let's just like, like, I just $5,000.
I feel like the percentage cut, because I don't.
Trying to do now, so that we're not accidentally unfairly just shooting numbers at FGSA
Because if you do that, some agencies, it will get proportionally more from some agencies.
Yeah.
But if you do a percentage.
Yes, thank you.
You say, we're just gonna take 3% off or 5% off or like something like that, that's like, so, you know, an amount, then it impacts everybody. Like the same, cause like 5%. Kind of impacts everybody.
To a certain extent, yeah.
I'm just looking for general enough numbers that it also just think in general, like, what events people do. You know, all I'm saying is like, they might say the math, but it's also different. I'm just looking to need to cut some of it.
We're just requesting to go through the mark,
And then there's 10,000.
even if there was a block vote, I think we could still go through those other pages. And like look at like what are the specifics here and do like a different thing, because I think the problem right now is that we're just stuck on that PSA page. Whereas we're not able to compare it with other people.
I need to go home. Okay, so that's such a great night. Which means then that divided by 87 is They are asking for 17.
This much just driving me crazy. It's like kind of fun.
This is like always the worst part.
7, 10,
Wow, and I'm like.
They're asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like that's it. Okay.
I kind of just like have it. Well, I'm doing this because I feel less crazy.
Okay, girl. Sure.
I am gonna have exact numbers written for absolutely every person by the end of this though, and so it will be an equitably distributed decrease over the 4,000. Okay.
I have fun.
Wait,
Okay, how are you?
okay, and then we want to decrease by 6,000.
So guys, how are we feeling so far?
What time did you
Like
say?
I'm doing more math than I've had.
A
to
lot
do
of
in my life.
uncertainty with everything changing. There are some lots of,
That's 6 minutes.
but
$60.
I am glad that we're able to have this open discussion in Senate.
Yes.
So that we better understand how we can best support students.
I want to support my police. That's what's happening here.
I'm gonna get a photo of you supporting the police. I think it's very good.
Do I need to look up or can I just be doing math?
And then, wait, can I just like?
Hold on.
Photo op.
So busy, guys.
Like.
Okay. Business.
And then you're like.
Very epic photo, thank you guys.
Thank you.
No, like, I the photo.
Sorry. I have no idea. Okay. I didn't
Did I
look
the
up.
photo?
I didn't look up once.
Oh, okay, good. No, you said thank you guys. So I was
They're in the
like.
background, I think.
literally,
worries,
like,
no worries.
spacing out, yeah.
Okay, we're getting there. I think we're gonna have an exact number by the end of this though. Oops, that's. Okay, I have the exact amount that I'm proposing we cut from each of them to get to $4,000 total. Based on the percentage.
Part of other.
Because it includes your base.
Which makes sense,
That's not how that.
but if we're cutting from everybody, we gotta cut from everybody.
Oh, no.
Okay. Hey, please, the dollar amount, because I just went through and found the total amount of programming requested by every single agency together. Then calculated what each of them was and what percentage of the total request that was and removed that percentage of 4,000. Which is to say, you'd be losing $597.60. Does that make sense to you? Okay.
So you're right.
Yeah, I was in there, but that's why I was like, I need to do math because I don't want to just say $500 to $1,000 and then that have that absolutely not be like percentage wise how much we're cutting. Because that just feels like they always have something very scary about being the first or the last person to go in someone like this. It's like the first person has this hot mess. The last person has us being exhausted and just being like, oh my god, get it out of my face. And so.
With me at 9 o'clock at night when I do some of the.
There.
Thank you. I always see people with them and I'm like, I feel like that's something that's needed. How are you? Good, how are you? What's your name? My name's Sarah.
And I broke my.
It's a little bedazzle and I like it. I'm gonna stand up before I.
Just don't.
Literally.
It's fine.
Oh, so being like, so what I'm doing now, so like, today,
I'm like I just done
5 p.m.
much more math than I have done in one sitting in a while.
And then tomorrow.
Cause it's my quarter to teach. I haven't answered.
I feel very. You said you need to charge your hours on him.
I like, I'm not good at it. So it's not right. It literally just says NPA office hours. I'm thinking of February.
There's a plug in the front of the room. I know that's really horrifically inconvenient.
That's all right.
Because I should, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You said you had a question for me.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously you did the math, so but I guess my question is like, how do you?
It's okay, it's personal.
I'm reporting. I'm gonna report you.
Maybe, but I'm gonna realize that we removed this specific amount from each of them at first. And then we're gonna be- And maybe that is a, maybe we need to make it a like, a block consideration.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that now. I just feel like we didn't have a chance to discuss why we were. Question, if we consider them by block.
Sorry.
We'll make edits.
I'm like, what are you?
Singularly, as we're considering them by block, right?
So if we can consider them and draw this little graphic again.
Incredible.
It was really helpful.
So
Cause I've considered in block, but never for something like that.
I don't know what to tell you.
But I was talking to Jake.
Cause then I know it's just a
So-
total amount overall that's being considered for them, but it's,
The second highest rate of pay reduced lunch days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if we approve them in block,
Yeah.
this is all our agencies, and we
Right.
say, good to go. Then it just comes back up here and we're considering them all together. And so we can go back and forth, but we.
so but even if the way we said we're considering them, we have time to debate before we.
So even if you approve,
Block or are we voting for them in block?
if we vote for them in block, right, it approves the agency budgets. But we go back into the total SGA, which includes the agency budgets. So they're technically being considered twice.
Okay, cause I have the exact amount I would, or that equitably would remove from each of them now. So, yes. So would it make more sense? I feel like at this point, I'm ready to turbo mode
That's just mine. I see.
do the rest of them, because I know exactly how much equitably would be taken from each of them. So I went into every single one of their spreadsheets and figured out what their programming request was, then looked at the totals and found the percentage that each of them made up, and then took that percentage out of 4,000 and discovered the number that would be for each of them.
Hey, let's say 27.
Each one of them has like a specific dollar. But it's inequitably like, if you ask for only 10% of the total amount overall for agency.
Yeah.
Programming,
I've heard
but
that.
only losing 9% of 4,000. Whereas.
Yes, it is. I have one thing.
They made up 25,000 out of.
Don't get it.
Percentage. Probably just. But now.
The student senate is back from recess. Awesome.
From our.
Is there any discussion on FGSA's budget request for student activity budget? Chief of Staff Ostick.
Something that I like, I just need to say this out loud. One of the upsides of, if we were to move away from, and I'm just really thinking out loud right here, from that, SLS, that second lawyer in this request, it does basically punt the decision making on whether or not it would happen, that expansion to a later session, to Senate later, this year. That's because there need to be that resolution that would be voted on. That's what's gonna fund that. And I just think that's an important consideration.
Senator Hirschman Harding.
I think I definitely wanna fund it. I think we're just kind of considering where our money's coming from. I did a lot of math during that recess. So what I did is knowing that what we would need to cut, regardless of what shenaniganry we're going to do, considering the other $80,000 from our reserves or whether or not that's gonna go through. I looked at the $4,000 that we estimated we were still gonna need to cut to get down to 0% and figured out how to equitably remove that from programming from each of the agencies by percentage. So what I did was found the total amount of programming being requested by every single one of the agencies based on the information we have in these spreadsheets. Then I took that total, found out what each agency was asking for as a percentage of the total. It was $87,000 in programming total, so we found out what percentage each agency was asking to be allocated. Then took a $4,000 cut and took that percentage and put it into the 4,000s, which is to say, like, for example, for FGSA specifically, since it's still, poor guys, there's still their churn. FGSA asked for 13,000 out of 87,000, which ended up being 14.94% of the total request for programming from all agencies, which would be a $597.60 decrease. That is to say that the rest of the money that isn't that $4,000 needs to be our problem as the parent agency. So the other $80,000 that needs to get solved, or however much, we need to figure out when it's SGA's turn. But just as looking to get rid of that $4,000 without causing damage or maximal damage to our agencies, just assume that the only amount that I want to remove from our agencies, seeing how they've added this, is $4,000 total between the 6 of them. So With that, I'm gonna make an actual motion. Yay! I'm motioning to decrease event programming for FGSA by $597.60.
What was that number? 500?
$597.60, because nothing can be easy. We can change that. We can round that number if that makes it easier for SABC purposes later, but
190. 197. Director Lacy.
What line item are you pulling that out of?
I said that programming.
Yeah, but underneath of that, with one.
I thought you said that it's, all that red stuff is technically just under.
Yeah, but like, so in their presentation, that's explicitly how much they ask for each one. Okay, well, okay, whatever.
I mean, I can pick one if we want, but some of them don't have it broken down like that. It just says programming. So since I'm trying to do it equally throughout all of them, it is just that decrease to programming. So it's technically overall just a $597.60 decrease of their budget overall.
13.
Specifically for them, it's coming out of collaborations. Okay, then for them specifically, because of the way the document works, it would be coming out of collaborations just because we have to pick one.
So Senator Hirschbaum Harding has made a motion to decrease collaboration from FGSA to $2,000 to, what was your?
Oh, man, hold on, now I gotta subtract it. Oh, I didn't think about that part. 2,000, right.
Was it 597?
Their total now for
It's
collaborations would be
597.60.
their total right now, though, with that decrease would be $1,402.40 for collaborations.
And 40.
Never a dull moment.
Okay, I got the number. Okay, is there a second to Senator Hirschbaum Harding's motion? Senator Rai, is that a motion? Yes, okay. So there is motion. Now we're on to a period of debate on the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no debate, now the chair calls for voting. All those in favor, please raise your placards. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. And then in the opinion of the chair, collaboration is now $1,402.40. Can I change this?
I don't think, sorry, I don't think
Oh.
access to it can, if it's okay with everyone, can I make the edits to the Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, so if you could just read the number one
Yeah.
more time.
So the number is $1,402.40.
hey, 402. That's the. 40 cents.
And then, do I need to refresh it?
Sorry, I'm out. No, you're fine. I just.
Is the 40 cents in there?
Would you mind moving the decimal places over on all of those? Just so that we can see the 40 cents. It should be right up on your bar.
Right, I don't know why it's doing that. The 40 cents is included in the total. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's there. It's just
In the total,
being mean to
but
us.
for the event programming, it's not there, but it's there. That does not make sense, but it is.
Yeah, we see it in the total, and that's what
Okay.
really matters.
So now event programming is $12,402 with the total for FGSA is $17,282.40. Is there further discussion on FGSA's budget? So if there's no further discussion, now we're on to a period of voting for FGSA's budget. Which is, yeah, 17,000. All those in favor, please raise your placards. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, the Student Senate has unanimously decided on $17,282.40 for FGSA to propose for Student Activities Budget Commission. Senator Meister.
Just a general request for members of exec, including the director of finance and chief of staff, to take note of any money that is cut from these proposed budget allocations based on the request from the agencies to our final approval.
Noted. I have it in the minutes, the amount.
Thank you, Director Lacey, for adding the budget to the overall FJ's budget. Alright, so we did FGSA, next is Women and Gender Equity Center. Women and Gender Equity Center, okay. So is there any further discussion? Senator Hirschbaum Harding?
Looking again exclusively at programming, since that was where the cut came from, to get to the 4,000 overall for all agencies. WGC has that request of 15,000, putting them at 17.24% of the total programming request for all agencies, which means that the amount that, if we are still equitably cutting from their programming to get to 4,000, would be $689.60. So I'm gonna go ahead and, just for the sake of forward motion, I am motioning to remove $689.60 from the programming account line item, which puts us at, get my calculator, 689.60, which would put them at $14,310.40.
$14,310.40. Is there a second to Senator Hirschbaum Harding's motion to make programming account $14,310.40, seconded by Senator Meister? Is there discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, now we're on to a period of voting on the motion. All those in favor, please raise your placards. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. So in the opinion of the chair, programming account for WGEC will be $14,310.40. Is there further discussion on WGEC's budget? Senator Hirschbaum Harding?
The rest of this makes sense to me, especially considering that, you know, goodness willing, they'll actually be able to use their funding next year the way that they were hoping to. So the rest of it, I think, makes sense, especially if we're considering that the rest of the cuts we're wanting to make is gonna come from our budget, not from our agencies. So looks pretty good to me, unless anybody else has anything else to say about it.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Meister?
Just a brief note that we can motion to make the subsequent assumed changes to the other four agencies in block if needed.
In block voting?
Yes, so you could say motion to change X agency, X account by X amount, and we could do all four of them together if you'd prefer. It's up to you.
We'll have to say all of the numbers for, that's the thing, is we'll have to toggle between them anyway, so it might just for.
Totally up to you. Just wanted to.
I only have one calculator. Thank you, but I just.
Senator
Yes, here it is.
Palacios?
Point of clarification, would it be the same amount of the cut or would it be different?
It would be the proposed amount based off the percentages that Senator Hirschbaum Harding had created. So essentially, we had that $80,000 and whatever proportion of their budget of programming was made up in that percentage is what helps to determine what percentage of the $4,000 they have to pay in order to make the appropriate cuts. And that's all already been calculated.
So to further respond to that, I could propose, my proposal could just be, I'm proposing to make the appropriately like assigned cuts to all of the remaining agencies, and then I would just list to you what those numbers would be. Just for the sake of voting, it would be faster if I just say I'm proposing to make those proposed allocated cuts.
So same percentage, different amount in dollars.
Different percentages.
Different percentage, same ratio
Okay.
of what they were requesting to what is being cut. Equitable ratios is what it is. I just can't think about how to verbiage that into this.
Is there a motion to do block voting on all agencies except FGSA's
No,
to
I have to,
programming?
I'd have to make the change first, and I'm trying to think about how to word it to get it to be a valid motion, because my best guess, just saying words, not actually motioning. My best guess would be, I am motioning to make the equitably allocated cuts to the programming line item of the 4 remaining agencies, but I don't know if that's,
And that would include, and you would say.
and then I would
11
say the numbers.
However many percent of programming for this agency, that's this much money.
So we'll have to one by one still change the numbers, we just wouldn't have to keep voting on each one of them. Matter of fact,
Austin?
I'm motioning to do that, actually.
Sure.
Never mind. I'm motioning to make the proposed equitable cuts to each of the programming account line items to the 4 remaining agencies. For example, we have QTS making up 17.24% of the total programming request, meaning that they'll have a cut of $689.60.
Okay.
NDA made up only 10.34% of the total request for programming, leaving them with a cut of $413.60. ISS made up 28.73% of the total programming request, leaving them with a cut of $1,149.20 for programming.
What was that number?
$1,149.20.
Yep.
And then AMS made up 11.49% of the programming request, leaving them with a cut of $459.60.
Chief of Staff Ossick, do you have the numbers?
Yes, I have the numbers.
Okay.
Is there a second to Senator Hirschman Harding's motion, seconded by Senator Meister? Now we're on to a period of discussion. Is there any discussion? Senator Meister?
I think this is a great idea.
Still make it much faster. That's all I'm saying. We don't have to keep voting on those cuts.
Is there any further discussion? So now we're on to a period of voting. All those in favor, please raise your placards. 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yep.
Okay. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. Okay. In the opinion of the chair, the motion passes. Okay. Director of Finance, Lacey, do you need the numbers
Yeah,
again?
do you want me to type what the remaining programming would be, actually? Just send you what each?
Yeah, can you just email it to me?
Yeah.
please? I can do it, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
FGSA and WGEC is already in SGA. Those two have been.
Perfect. And they're all good. They weren't included in the weird block, so.
As the one
They're
question, we hadn't yet voted on WGC, just as a matter of procedure.
I thought we did.
We voted on changing their line item. We haven't actually approved their budget.
But
We should.
is that a motion?
Do we have to vote on it if I'm motioning to do it, though? I think we just stay silent for a second and let Kevin do it.
I guess so.
So, wait. So, you put 10 for yes for FGSA, and no for 0 for no. And then 0 for abstain. Alright, perfect. And then for this one, was the change happening? Did the change happen? For programming? Yes. Did was the decrease, did the decrease happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, okay, perfect.
Top motion to increase it, we didn't the vote to official.
Okay, so awesome. So now the total budget is $38,890.40 for WEC. Senator Meister,
Motion to approve the budget for WGEC.
is there a second? Senator Hirschbaum Harding. Now we're on to a period of discussion.
No changes.
Senator Meister,
They did a good job putting this budget proposal together, and I think it's appropriate to push forward to the SABC.
okay, so now we're on the approval of the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
You can go to the vote.
So now we're on to a period of voting. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Nine. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. Then 0. So in the opinion of the chair, the motion passes. And then that is the final budget for WGEC, which is $38,890.40 that the Student Senate will be requesting for Student Activities Budget Commission. So now our next item of business is International Student Services. Oh. Thank you. International Student Services. Okay. Is there any discussion for International Student Services? Senator Meister?
Point of clarification, just wanted to make sure that the appropriate change had been made to reflect
We're
the
trying.
senator's adjustment.
We're trying.
Director Lacey?
Not yet.
No, I'm still typing what their line items technically are.
Senator Meister?
This is withdrawn.
Withdraw. Chief of Staff Ostick?
Okay, hold on, I
As
gotta
a
do this one
proposal
first
for
and then I will
motion,
look at that,
we
but
could
I need-
advance to an appointment for student court justices while we fix the spreadsheet and go through that approval.
Senator Meister?
Motion to table the current budget approval process until after the consideration of student court justice.
Is there a second?
Okay, I missed too
So,
too many details.
I can explain.
Senator Meister?
We are going to pause, we're just gonna pause the continued consideration of these budgets while these two are talking about getting the right numbers on the board. And then we're going to consider a student court justice, which is down the agenda
Oh, so
line.
it's still happening today. We're just considering that person so they're not trapped
Yes.
here?
Wait, are we
Okay.
motion to move to group? Are we motioning?
No, we're not motioning to move to group. We're motioning
have
to
to-
table what we're doing right now
There's a
and
student
come
court
back to
justice
it
we want to
later. in the-
recruit first.
Oh, okay,
Because this
okay.
poor person is just
Cool,
fighting
cool.
for their
Okay,
life here.
just,
Yes.
okay, thank you so much for that clarification.
Now, is there a second to the motion to table the budget and the student court justice appointment?
So I'm just picking
And
one.
noting that it's tabling until after the consideration of the student court justice so that it
Oh,
doesn't
I'm
go
telling you
into
what
it.
would be left in it.
And then after the consideration of the student court justice.
Please also tell you what.
Senator Rye is a second? No, okay. So now, okay, so there's a motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Senator Meister?
Please.
So now we're on to, wait, is there further discussion? So now we're on to a period of voting. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Got 9, 10, 10. Okay. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, the motion passes. Okay. So now this portion of the agenda is tabled for right now after the consideration of the appointment for student court justice. Maria. Is there a proponent speech?
Hello, everyone. I grew up in a small town where most individuals had the same political opinion. And having a different opinion made you stand out in ways that weren't always positive. My family was one of the few that didn't align with the majority. I had a hard time navigating my political opinions throughout high school. As someone who believes deeply in equality, kindness, and standing up for what's right, I often felt silenced. My voice would often go unheard because I feared what others might think of me. But during those years, I learned a valuable lesson. Standing up for what you believe in is far more important than how others view you. That realization has shaped me as the person I am today and drives me to pursue a career in law with a focus on individuality, equality, and justice. I'm currently a freshman majoring in criminal justice, and my goal is to become an immigration lawyer. I want to fight for those who seek freedom and safety, especially those whose voices often go unheard. I believe this journey, from growing up in a community where my own voice was stifled to finding my own path, makes me a strong candidate for student court. I've learned to listen to different perspectives, stay open-minded, and advocate for fairness. I want to be the voice for those who may feel marginalized or voiceless, just as I once did. Throughout high school, I demonstrated leadership in many ways, as captain of the cross-country team, as a member of speech team, and as a member of Health Occupations Students of America, and as well as balancing work and academics. I ended high school with a 4.25 GPA, broke 5 school records, and received many local scholarships, proof of my hard work and dedication. These experiences have taught me many valuable lessons, like how to handle situations where people have different opinions than me, how to communicate in front of large groups with professional voice, and how to use my own voice while letting others express their own opinions. I can apply these experiences to student court and become a great asset. To me, leadership is not just about accomplishments. It is more about making fair, unbiased decisions. I've learned the importance of viewing political issues from different angles. Something that I've noticed is that in law, being biased can play a big role. We can't deny that the law, like everyone else, is affected by implicit bias. I want to work to reduce that bias and make sure everyone's voice is heard, especially in difficult situations. With that being said, my main way of viewing a political document is to work on not having implicit bias. I believe that it is extremely important to have an unbiased perspective because it reinforces the credibility, integrity, and respect that goes along with it. It is important for me to view these documents with prior background knowledge, understanding the context of the document, and how relevant they are. For me, these aspects are crucial because it helps me not misunderstand important pieces of information. I can engage in discussions and give them meaning, and I can form my own educated opinion on how to respond to the document. I've always been able to understand and connect with the feelings of others, which makes me an empathetic person. This quality is a way for me to handle conflict because it gives me the ability to understand what each person is feeling, which is crucial to address the conflicts with integrity and an open mind. Solving conflict has always been a strong suit for me, primarily because of my ability to address the cause of the conflict. I find myself figuring out the root cause to prevent situations like it from happening again. Being a part of student court would be an amazing opportunity and a great honor. I believe that my prior leadership experience, my ability to handle conflict, and my unbiased perspective will positively add to student court. I will stand up for what's right, prioritize fairness, and make sure every student's voice is valued. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'd be honored to have your support.
Now, Julia.
Question for you if I can. Am I projecting okay with my voice?
Yeah.
I know I was a little quiet earlier, sorry everyone. Has there ever been a time where you've experienced, whether it's in previous student involvement, or in just conversations relating to school or work life, a conflict of interest? And if you were to ever experience a conflict of interest on the court, how would you approach that?
Yeah, definitely in high school, there's a lot of conflicts of interest. Ways that I've handled that is just like, I think it's important to hear everyone's opinion and understand where everyone else is coming from. And as a way for me to handle that, I think it would definitely just be important to hear each side of the story. And that's probably how I would solve it.
Thank you.
Is there any further questioning? Now we're on to a period of discussion on our student court justice candidate. Is there any discussion? Regent Adida?
She's a very
Is there any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, now we're on to a period of voting, and then for student court justices, it requires a 2/3 majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, Maria has been appointed to student court. Okay, so now our next item of business is going back to Student Activities Budget Commission for International Student Services. Is there any further discussion on the International Student Services budget request? Senator Meister?
Point of information of class, just curious if any necessary changes have been made to reflect the senator's previous motion.
Yes.
Director Lacy?
All of them are done.
All
So
of them are
that,
done,
so the total number on the remaining four is whatever percentage from whatever.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion on International Student Services? If there's no discussion, for our final budget is $25,212.80. Now we're on to a period of voting. All those in favor, please raise your placards. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, sorry. In the opinion of the chair, $25,212.80 will be requested for Student Activities Budget Commission for International Student Services. There. So our next item of business is American Multicultural Students Agency. Is there any discussion on the final budget for AMS? No discussion for AMS. Now we're on to a period of voting. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Nine. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. Is it working now?
I wonder if the chats were them telling us that they couldn't hear us.
That's from a while ago.
Oh. Okay, then
Well. This is true. I mean, both of these are good points, but did not impact our overall change later. But
Senator Valadiers, is it possible to text that individual if it's
yeah, they're
working?
saying it.
Does it work?
Yes, it does.
It does work.
Sorry.
Okay. So the chat is right here. Do you guys still need it? No. Okay.
Here, fine.
So we are still in the discussion for NDA's requested budget. Was there a motion? No, okay, I was looking, okay. Is there discussion? If there's no discussion, now we're on to a period of voting for $10,000 and $587.40. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 10. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, the Student Senate has unanimously decided that NDA will request $10,586.40 to Student Activities Budget Commission. Our next item of business is Careers and Trans Services. Is there any discussion on Careers and Trans Services? Regent Adinam? Zoom in. Let me know when this. Is there any discussion for QTS requested budget? If there's no discussion, now we're on to a period of voting for QTS budgets. All those in favor, please raise your placards. 9. All those opposed, please raise your placards. Then in the opinion of the chair, QTS will request $16,810.40 to Student Activities Budget Commission. And then our last item on new business is the overall budget of Student Government Association, which is $512,156.40. Senator Meister?
Hi, yes. I would like to see for a request for information side by side, what it would look like to remove the recommended increase on student legal services for the new lawyer, and to see what total number it would bring us down to and whether or not we are at 0% at that time. And if we are, I'd like to make a motion with a caveat.
Request. Chief of Staff Ostick.
Can we request to move to group for like 5 minutes?
Oh.
Senator Piper,
I request to move to group for 7 minutes.
7 minutes. Is there a second? Senator Valderas, no debate necessary, requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. 9, 9. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, the student senate has gone recess for 7 minutes.
Yes. Just like. I say that like I'm trying to say things will be attention enough, planning sometimes a little bit more.
Actually, I'm like, oh, today we're 20.
Honest, when it put today and then I'm like.
Early, I love it.
I felt you specifically as I was like. I never like get to their mind because I'm like. It just doesn't go with the top lip, which is what I usually, I planned the outfit to have the logo. It's like, I want as many pink things on my body.
I was making Valentine's Day.
And I was serving Valentine's Day. Serving. Walking and go, this, you must really like this holiday. I went, yeah. What about it?
Yes.
Oh, but please, you wouldn't, man. My desk is covered in cards. I have handmade Valentines for all my students. I'm like, really?
I think it's 50%.
Yeah. I need to do some stuff.
Yeah. Is.
I was saying.
Yeah. Let's separate the soup so long.
Oh, that's crazy.
They're not included.
Oh, it's exposing. Very accessible, guys.
There we go. This woman here, equity center got.
Oh, I copied.
That's it.
Just keep your.
I think that should fix it, because that's not the difference. We're looking at.
Sorry.
The number that we should have.
Yeah.
Roughly.
It's summer.
I'm gonna leave it then, but I wanna make sure they don't for my lunch.
Balls chill from me, but
After 10, though, I don't really care. Camera will cover it last fall, so.
also, I'm gonna be up studying this till 10. Might as well study here. I can't believe it's already August 6th.
Last year, it's like dry.
I guess we could just supplement.
Well, then we include that one silly word we got.
I think I could relate on.
So like.
Yeah.
But when I guess that's so bad, but the numbers are actually.
We each got like,
Still won't like.
I know,
That's
right?
so funny.
Alex was like, if I'm in,
Those fall, just last night was 20. And that.
I think our workers don't. I don't know. Very funny.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I say that today because it's almost, it's not 5 minutes. You've got an.
I wouldn't do that because then you're forcing CPC to not consider.
I don't know. Oh, no, nothing about that.
I really understand what's going on, so we're gonna take some reserves.
That's what we're about to figure out. We actually did. The theoretical framework we're working is yes, we're gonna be using some of our reserves to make sure that we're not cutting from our agencies and like active stuff, so that we can still get the net, the new worker pursuing legal services. We haven't decided yet, though. That's what we figured out right now. Yeah, that's what we're saying. We will be zeroing out at the end of the night. We're just trying to figure out how that's gonna happen. The proposal right now is probably that we're going to be taking 80,000 out. I can't. The rest of the increase needed for legal services, just so that they're still getting that worker, but we're not increasing the amount we're taking per students.
I can't, Muriel.
The only thing that's actually been cut so far was 20,000 across all 6 agencies equitably.
What's the goal?
Zero. That's what we have been advised is probably the number we should hit. So.
That's not how I would. How do you spell it?
They're trying to figure out exactly what to get us there.
Actually,
They're just making sure that we have all the numbers in place before we start.
I hate that.
On the assumption we're going to take it to reserve.
That's how you.
It's possible, and I think that all of us are interested in the concept of actually doing that, at least for the student year, to make sure that student legal services is working correctly. We just also then are probably gonna. I can imagine that the only other thing that we'd be debating tonight would be the agency director wages, but I think that probably will be a touch that will definitely get debated during SABC, does every year. But that's how we just started with that. The 4,000 is the thing to cut directly from actual agency planning. Because I don't want this 80,000 something dollars that we need to get rid of to come from them. Because that's our job as a current organization to figure out, and we are in a like position where we have the viewers this year and.
Yeah.
I think we're just both trying to figure out a responsible plan. For making sure that we're not doing this every year, because I'm we can't. And then it's gonna bottom out. Which is a point that's been made with WPS in general.
But like, so the current total, Kevin, could you scroll down just a
Everybody who comes is.
Yeah. Without bonking anything out, our total right now is basically 561,546.
and that's before or after all.
That's after 4,000 total from the 6 agencies. And without taking anything or cutting any other items overall. And just that concept, I think. 1,000 out of the total 90,000 ish. It should be cut out, so. Let me explain it like normally. I also was fighting for my life. It's been a long day. I'm also not in charge. I'm also not in charge of teaching math. I'm science and social studies and I'm math back. You should just call it.
I just wanna make sure.
I'm pretty sure. It's fine.
I mean, on the record.
I mean, we're always.
Oh.
That's sometimes the best.
You're over. What about you guys?
You're over.
Super cold. Cold. Girls not cold in here. It's warm or anything.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you. Did you say lobotomy?
Always.
Live laugh. Live laugh. Lobotomy.
That's not saying.
How's it going back there?
Can't run.
Yep, they're on the same time.
That means
I'm
we
not
don't.
doing it.
Supplies and set it up.
You know what, that's good, the best thing you could be from SABC celebration.
But it would cost.
Damn, I invited to be that not so long.
The Senate is back from recess. The Senate is back from recess.
I got a bear though.
For our discussion, deliberating and voting on the overall Student Government Association's budget. Is there any discussion on our budgets? Oh, item. Senator Carlton Palacios.
I make a motion to cut $2,000 from the programming line budget,
Programming $2,000. Is there a second? Senator Piper. Now we're on to period of discussion to cut $2,000 from programming and branding. Is there any discussion on the motion? Senator Hirschbaum Harding.
Is the idea there just essentially that if we were to need that in actual programming next year, since our funding will be easier to use, just that we could pull it from reserves more easily than agencies could? Correct.
Let's see.
Also, yeah, like, if we end up needing more money, we do end up needing more
Okay.
money. We hopefully have a plan in place to access reserves more easier, but
Is there further discussion on the motion? If there's no further discussion, now we're on to a period of voting on the motion to strike or to decrease $2,000 from programming and branding to $5,000. All those in favor, please raise your placards. 9. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, programming and branding is now $5,000. Is there further discussion on the overall Student Government Association's budget? Senator Hirschbaum Harding.
I'm gonna ask the question just because I know it's gonna be a large part of what they're gonna be debating once it hits actual SABC. Are we, as our current plan, not removing the student worker wages and keeping agency directorships as paid positions? Because it was a debate of hours last year at SABC. So I know they're gonna have questions for us about what our standing was in here. And it was also the most tumultuous thing that we've debated all of last year. So just as like a temperature check, like, is that something that we currently are still keeping as is, or is it something that we're considering removing if we need to get zeroed out?
Regent Adidam.
on table for consideration for SJ to remove agency wages. I think for the past couple of years, for years, they noted like agency sustainability, and it's very non-negotiable for me to include the budget. When we're looking at utilizing the reserves to supplement our agencies, I think that's still needs some more strategic thinking that I'm hoping to figure out before it's posted, but yeah, it's non-negotiable.
Senator Meister.
Just speaking as an individual senator, I'd say we should stray from considering it within the context of our deliberations here. The agencies have fought for the better part of the last decade to get student directors funded. And even if we were to try and supplement for a term, the funding for their positions through the reserve, that would mean we would have to get a brand new line item back on the docket for SABC. And it would be pretty much considered as a new line item, and they would have to fight for the continuity of that line item all over again. So I'd say possibly the very last item we would consider, even after contracts, should be removal of any salaries or anything like that.
I'm not particularly in disagreement. I just know that it was like the most teetering thing that got talked about last year. And I think it just is good to have that temperature check on the record. And I know that it is, especially just considering the fact that there will be the knowledge that there was an audit of those agencies. I just wanted to add some credibility to the fact that we still think that that's something that makes sense within our budget, just knowing good and well how strongly it was debated last year and the fact that it's just kind of inevitably also gonna get discussed this year, but just wanted to temperature check it, oh my goodness, temperature check it before sticking it in there.
Regent Adidam.
Yeah, well, I agree. I think in reality, it truly is up to the commission. I also foresee like a really heavy conversation surrounding student worker. But I think like it is in the best interest of SGA to continue to like item and agency director. But then in lieu of that, like I personally would stray from cutting any more of our SGA budget in Senate. I think that right now, we have submitted a really bare bones budget in terms of like what we are asking for, and a lot of these are contractual agreements, like the counter retainer, like insurance expenses, MAP ride, MAP buy, student worker wages, student legal services that unfortunately cannot be touched, and the ones that can be touched are very, very
Senator Meister, request for information from Regent Aguilar. Do we have any position from the administration as to if they would make exception for the increase in student fees that would be necessitated by a student legal services office increase? So historically, if we have needed specific staff positions that are heavily indicated by data, they have given exceptions to the fee increase requirements that they provide the SABC. Do you know, is that something the administration's considered? Because historically, those fee increase percentiles have made it absolutely impossible to create new large programs and contracts. So we've had to get exceptions in the past.
Right now, I guess my only understanding is that they are looking for a 0% increase. I guess you can look at a question to see if they would be interested in increasing this fee for student legal services. I think what would end up happening is that we would do a pilot program on the new lawyer, see how many cases come in, and then making that request for the following year. Just kind of justifying the student increase based on the success of the student.
Senator Hirschbaum Harding.
Another request for information, so are we, I know that before we left, we were considering cutting from that, knowing that we're gonna use reserves to fund it. Are we looking to cut that now or let that be a fight best fought by the commission?
Regent Adidam.
I think it's something that the commission should definitely consider. Right now, I'm not comfortable cutting it in Senate because I want that to be up for debate.
Senator Meister, request for information. If we were to request from the Student Legal Services Office justification for that new position, do you think that they would possibly be able to provide us or the commission numbers
Yeah.
to help support that request?
They do get like monthly reports, and we also got a 2024 annual report, and then I know Jacob Steele, our current lawyer, has sent in the justification why the partner, the second full-time lawyer will add benefit to his office.
Okay.
So we have all that documentation. I didn't include it in this presentation. I only included high level number. But if the commission needs those specific reports, I have.
Absolutely.
Chief of Staff Ostick.
For the Senate, I do have the rough numbers that Jacob had estimated on what the capacity increase would likely be. As far as response time, previously there's a 24-hour response time. It's up to 96 hours. It'd likely be able to get back down towards that 24-hour range, depending on how much caseload increases as well. As a couple of example for specific things, name changes used to be a 90-day process. They're now they're a 150-day process. Family law is now off the table and is just advice only and no representation. The impact would be the office itself, it would effectively double the number of cases that they could do per month. Just having a second attorney on there. How it would impact the ability to move back into family law is kind of up in the air just because they're so time intensive cases where it's when you have limited resources. They're still advising for that, but that's one of the area, and then they would be able to expand the number of law services they're able to offer.
Senator Meister.
I mean, given all of the information that we've been provided by Chief of Staff and the Regent, I think that it's very necessary that we consider an inclusion of their request for the additional position. Speaking both as a senator and as a commissioner, I think it is worth consideration in those spaces. I would not feel comfortable cutting it personally and think that it's a very valuable resource for the student body despite the necessary fee increase it would incur. So provisionally.
Is there further discussion on SGA's requested budget? If there's no further discussion, now we're on to a period of voting for the requested budget for Student Government Association. All those in favor, please raise your placards. And then all those opposed, please raise your placards. In the opinion of the chair, Student Government Association shall request $559,546.80 for Student Activities Budget Commission.
What was the vote total?
10, 0, and then 0. So that concludes the new business. Our next item of business is executive reports. May we have Regent items reported?
Yeah, so I guess you guys already heard the news, the new 5.9 policy in Board of Regents passed, which means that we finally have access to our funding. Very grateful for this. It was a very long process, lots of meetings over winter break, but I am glad that we have access to our funding. We have a lot of great things. I know there is a lot of frustration with the way that purchases are being processed, but because it's such a nuanced thing, we do need to make sure that everyone understands it. It's a learning curve for everyone, and I just want to thank Budget Committee for taking the time to deliberate for 5 hours, because not everything is black and white. There are a lot of gray areas, and making those decisions on how to be a good financial steward is really tough, and thank you. Additionally, I am looking into the food policy. I drafted some amendments in regards to changing it for student organization, and I have received a lot of feedback from the AVP of Financial Services on how to best ensure that it is well defined. So after I kind of submit my feedback and revise some things, I think to schedule all of them and discussing this further. But they are also in the process of amending the overall food policy amendment. I'm hoping that when they finally do adopt it in that 30-day period, they'll be able to solicit more feedback from the Student Government Association. And as you guys know, a legislative session is currently happening in Nebraska for any sort of like bills and resolutions you want to lobby for, and actually like have some SGA or student body support, or please let me know. I would love to help you guys support everything that we do here in the campus wide, but also like in the state as well.
Is there any questions for Regent Anidam? So for my report, the SJ retreat is still happening. We were unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but members of the 2025 Planning Committee attended the Board of Regents meeting last week, so we were unable to attend a meeting, but we are hosting those meetings and be able to provide you guys some more updates about the retreat that's happening on March 6th. For today, I had a meeting with the Traffic Appeals Commissioner, and what we decided is just to update policies for Traffic Appeals Commission and being able just to help them out. And lastly, And then lastly, I would like to recognize Director Lacey and then Director Nguyen for providing structure and order, especially during Student Activities Budget Commission. So if everyone is able to give them a round of applause. So, and then that should be my report. What questions do you guys have? May we have Chief of Staff Ostic's report?
Geez, sorting through my mind. If it's important, I'll shout it out later, but everyone else is gonna report everything that I'm gonna report, so it's gonna go down the line. Oh, wait, yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm putting together a list of like past members of student government. That's what I'm working on for like a mailing, like an alumni list. So I've been working on that.
Is there questions for Chief of Staff Ostic?
Yeah. Okay. Like seniors right now?
Yeah, so
Okay.
that we can invite them for the end of year celebration.
Got it.
And then Director of Administration Gonzalez is not here. We'll have Director of DEIA Wynn's report.
Yeah, so next week, ECMO is having its own screening in the water, so that will be on people in the week at 9:30 p.m. And then WGEC and AMS are holding the Understanding the Human Camera event on the 26th. And then had a meeting with the Rules Committee. Thank you to Senator Rye for organizing that meeting to discuss like student worker policy and the student agency directors. That's what's needed.
May we have, is there any questions for Director Nguyen? May we have Director of Finance Lacey's report?
Yeah, so first off, I know she left, but I huge congratulations to Shani for passing the board of regents at 29 days. That is a huge accomplishment. I know it took a long time, but I am super proud. It was a huge collective effort on multiple different UNO people's parts. I'm really proud of her with that. Budget presentations were a great success last week. Same with this week. Again, thank you everyone for this week. Also 9:35, not 2 a.m. in the morning. So I hugely appreciate all of you for doing what you guys do. So I guess this was talked about tonight as well, the budget committee meeting for 5 hours. A huge thank you to them for taking the 5 hours out of their Saturday to do that. That was also a huge collective decision to have budget committee be the first ones to review that. I will say that Sierra and I and others are actively working to try to make the process go quicker. So I know that like I sound like a broken record, but please be patient. This is a new process for everyone. We're trying to figure it out. So thank you, and that's all I got.
Is there any questions for Director Nguyen? May we have Director of Recruitment Human's report?
So Director Mai and I are currently working on finding people for the election commission. So if you know anyone that would be good in that role, if you could send them my way, that'd be lovely. And then also looking for someone to fill the fine arts and media seats or seat. So again, if you know anyone who's a part of that college, if you could send them my way, that would be great. Yeah, that's all I got. So thank you.
Is there any questions for Director Hinman? May we have Coordinator Student Wellness Arizari Scums report?
Yes, well, we've been working to get the 4 resource guide descriptions from Map Pro, Gateway, RSLs, and Greek Life. We are done with Map Pro and we're done with the Gateway. We're just waiting for Nolon. Hopefully tomorrow morning, the descriptions, and we'll be done with that portion of the resource guide and submit to review. Then, yeah, I went to another Greek Life meeting where I discussed developments and the things that we discussed in the RSL Council meeting and results of that, mainly talking about the food policy, things that we're championing to change hopefully in the near future. And also got asked to champion some initiatives from Greek Life from their leadership that I will be taking on, and then I talked to some senators to work on them. Also got given a survey by Greek Life with information about things that they would like to see campus, and I will be using that as I process what initiatives do I wanna kind of like take on. And also reach out to Victoria Kahoot to see if I can invite some senators into campus to tour the campus and kind of talk about how does address basic needs for students.
Is there any question? Our next item of business is committee chairs report. May we have budget committee chairs Calaton Palacios report.
All right, first of all, I want to thank my budget committee members. Thank you for everything you guys do. I appreciate you guys every single day. Thank you, Director of Finance Lacey, for everything that you do. I appreciate you too. First of all, budget committee, we've gone through one purchase on February 4th, and we went through 4 purchases this past Saturday. And then we went over our budget committee purchasing review profiles document. We went over the aid plan, training for our purchases. And we're still deciding for an additional time to meet up so we can go through those purchases. And then we're planning to all meet with Sierra because we're planning to do a purchase agreements form. And also I am planning to meet with Sierra again this next week. And then I've also been meeting with Sierra just to get some more clarification about this purchasing plan and about contractual agreements.
Is there any questions for budget committee chair?
Point of information, just for the record, how long was the document the budget committee had to create in order to create an equitable way to approve purchases?
For the purchase, our
The protocol.
4 pages, right? 14 pages.
Is there any, Director Lacey?
A huge shout out to Budget Committee for creating that. And mostly Senator Meister, but also everyone else for reviewing the document and making it align with the interim version. So huge shout out to them. That's my fault.
Is there any further questions for budget committee chair? If not, may we have civic engagement committee chair Piper report?
I actually have no report, so.
May we have DEIA's committee chairs Valadares report?
I don't have much to report. I know I'm just working on finding a day to meet with Kevin to better support my committee.
May we have outreach committee chairs? Here's Mom Harding's report.
Much of the same stuff, which is there's not a ton to report since we haven't had a committee time. I would just like to, again, I know if it's already been said, give a shout out to some of my fellow committees, especially budget and rules. It's easy to criticize the inefficacy of these processes without recognizing the amount of hard work that it takes to get there, and the fact that you guys are doing this completely as volunteer work and as part of your requirements for SGA, which is also volunteer basis. And, you know, yes, it requires a lot of responsibility and there is a high standard that should be followed, but I just want to, you know, acknowledge that you're doing this all out of the goodness of your hearts and your interest for the student body, which is a lot more than what the rest of us can say for a lot of, you know, unpaid, thankless positions. So thank you for doing it. I know that some of the work that we have to do is a lot more complicated than others. So I, as the person who, you know, gets to smile and wave and plan the fun stuff, I'm very grateful for those of you that are volunteering your time to do the stuff that's a little bit less fun and gratifying to do. So shout out to y'all.
May we have rules committee chairs Rise report?
I'm gonna meet with Garrett today to discuss the student employment process, how that works, how to deal with hiring, terminations, all of that fun stuff. And this committee will be working on that soon.
Is there any questions for rules committee chair? If not, our next item of business is good of the order. The good of the order is it's a skill you're working on developing. For me, I will say recognizing the hard work that recognizing the hard work.
Playing the fiddle.
I don't know, I'm so sorry. I have no idea.
With myself.
Taking it easy.
Senator Meister. Ice climbing. I've been working on ice climbing and I'm climbing a route up Mount Rainier next year. It's gonna be like several thousand feet of ice. It's gonna be great.
Being faster when I teach. It's supposed to just be meandering, you know?
That's true. Mine's like not procrastinating on stuff I have to do. I'd probably say learning to give people more grace.
Speaking slower.
Yeah.
Financial responsibility. Texting people back and not ghosting.
Caitlin.
Maintaining my own health.
Not procrastinating.
Summarizing my speak.
Oh, Teresa.
More about investments.
Arts leader, making layups.
Being proactive.
Being proactive, Sierra.
Not being have results for you.
And then Drew.
I'm gonna say patience with myself, but also with other people.
Yeah, you know what, hell, yeah.
I motion to adjourn. I motion to adjourn.
Hardy, is there a second? Senator Senator Rangel. Now, is there any discussion on the adjournment? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Ah.
Those opposed, say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the meeting is adjourned.
Yay.
Just more easier than I am.